Welcome to Uncomfortable Growth Uncut, where we celebrate those who defy fear, embrace growth, and live without regret. We rarely hear about the challenges, fears, and crossroads that successful leaders grapple with across work and life. Uncomfortable Growth Uncut shines a light on their personal story and the critical human skills we all need today to turn ongoing tough trials into triumph. So, welcome, Clive, to Uncomfortable Growth Uncut. Let me just tell my listeners a little bit about Clive. He is one of the most incredible humans. He's a personal friend of mine, but we met through work. And we've had a beautiful, lovely relationship between our families and our kids. But from a work perspective, he's incredibly impressive. He has started agency businesses, sold them to holding companies. He was a founding partner of Global Citizen, which is just incredible, still going strong. It's the most incredible organization. He has also taken a career break, semi-retired for a few years, and now is back. He is now working with entrepreneurs and helping them to understand how they can not only build an awesome business, but lead an awesome life, because those two don't necessarily go hand in hand. And he has his current business, Compadres, which I love the name, which brings all of his life experience and wisdom and knowledge together. So that's Clive, and I know he's going to have an incredible, uncomfortable growth story for us. So welcome, Clive.
Thank you. Hello. Thanks. Great introduction. Sounds good.
He's also really humble, so you can see him kind of going, it's true, but it's not what he tells you. So
Well, it
what
was
I
all.
really
Sorry, I jumped in.
no, I
It
was
was
going to
all.
say
All of that was uncomfortable.
yeah, because he's just an amazing, humble person with
Thank you.
some incredible, uncomfortable growth stories. So, Clive, I know you've got many in your life, but what's the uncomfortable growth story you want to share with me today?
Okay. Is it just one, or you'd like a few?
You can as many as you want over the next
Okay.
30 to 40 minutes.
Okay. Cool. Well, I'll try to give your listeners and viewers as much as possible in a short period of time. Um, So first of all, I think that discomfort is life's greatest gift. In that, that's where you learn the most about yourself and certainly about life. And at the time, we don't like going through it, but I have a philosophy: no scars, no wisdom; no pain, no gain. And therefore, when you're going through an uncomfortable moment, it's what am I learning from this moment? There's a great quote: "Life, it is said, is the only course in which the lesson comes after the exam." Full stop. My interpretation of that is, what am I learning from this? What am I
Mm.
learning right now? And I said that to my daughter yesterday, who's going through some exams at the time, which we all love or hate. So I think probably an uncomfortable growth story was, the one that I could share, which is right now. So as you mentioned, I've come back from what I thought was going to be a retirement of, John Dutton from Yellowstone, riding horses and herding cattle. And I've come back into a business life in the city, and growing a business that has clients in all parts of the world. I think a couple of uncomfortable moments. I think coming back to the city from the country was enormously uncomfortable because, leaving the city, as we know, when we go away from a weekend, it always feels great. When you come back to the city and you come back to the grind and the day to day of your work, that's always somewhat confronting. So if you imagine that magnified, that's what I've gone through this year is just a change in the energy and the environment. I found that really uncomfortable. And what I've learned there is what I already knew is just how important it is to get away. The other thing probably in starting a business is, who here has suffered imposter syndrome? Who here has suffered fear? Who here has suffered doubt? Who here has suffered, um, you know, staring into the great unknown? So, starting a business is that for all of us. There's wins, there's losses, there's ups and downs. So that piece has been uncomfortable. But then the other piece I've seen is that you get messages back from the marketplace, so and engagement. So I've been lucky in the first 12 months. I've ended up with clients a lot in the UK and a lot in the US and here in Australia. So that's an indication that I'm on the right path. But then you look down to the future and say, okay, this is 12 months in or a little bit over. What's the journey in the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Having gone through this process before with multiple businesses, that's scary and that's uncomfortable. But also doing it for the, let's say the 10th time, this time I've got patience, wisdom, and I know that time tells truth and time actually is our friend. Whereas before, when I started businesses, I was so impatient and I wanted to achieve a lot and I wanted to do all these, I wanted to achieve more than anyone else, whatever anyone else was. And that was my identity and that was my ego. Whereas now it's my business Compadres is about how do I make a difference to other people. That can happen in one conversation or it can happen in a multiple conversations over months and years. So I think that the uncomfortable piece about right now is probably the unknown.
So Clive, you have, created multiple businesses and built them to such an extent that they've been sold to holding companies. Like you've been through this curve. So I'm really fascinated just by what do you tell yourself in your own head when you feel the imposter syndrome coming back, or it's the fear of the unknown, even though you've been through it before, it still comes back. So what do you tell yourself? Like, what's the voice in your head that helps you to continue to move forward?
Okay, so the wisdom I have from other people, mind you, is that if you're experiencing imposter syndrome, then you're on the right path. As I said before, is being uncomfortable is a gift. Experiencing fear is a gift. Experiencing doubt is really just a byproduct of your past. But imposter syndrome, as the example, means that and fear means that you're on the precipice of doing something you haven't done before, which makes you feel uncomfortable, which means that there's a breakthrough moment around the corner. And also, fear is a byproduct of inaction as well. So if you're experiencing fear, the greatest thing to do is get in action. Fear can also be a byproduct of me wanting to look good, to be perfect, to get it right. And the only way to work out if you can get it right is actually to be in action. So sitting in fear or not wanting to walk on stage with the imposter syndrome is just a byproduct of, that you're on the right track.
Yeah. So do you have these conversations still with yourself? I mean, this stuff, but the fear still happens, right?
Yeah, it does. Like I'm a faulty device. And we all are. And I say this to my beautiful partner, Emma, is that, we're all faulty devices doing our best in a crazy world. And we are. And I think it's a tough time in the world. We discussed some things before we were on this record, just to do with our families. So, but our children are going to school and like passive smoking, they're dealing with the comparison of social media. So even if your son or daughter isn't on social media, they're passively consuming comparisons by other people, their surrounds from social media. So we're dealing with exceptionally challenging times. So I think it's the byproduct of society right now is challenging. It does project more fear, more comparison than ever before. So yes, I have feelings of doubt and fear and apprehension all the time. And if you and some people, you know, that I deal with, the entrepreneurs that I deal with, they some of them feel those things too. They have, you know, again, we're all faulty devices. We're just trying to work it out. And if we were all compadres, if you like, and just were like, hey, you're trying to work it out? Yeah, I'm trying to work it out. You're trying to work it out? Yeah, I'm trying to work it out. If we walk together a little bit, we would probably live with less fear and doubt.
Yeah, I love that, the faulty devices. You know, and I talk a lot about our small self and best self in my uncomfortable growth course that you've done.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think it's constant. It's like they both exist. Our small self is the part where we have fears and we're not sure and we have doubt and we have imposter syndrome and comparisons. You know, it's all about we're not enough. And it's there all the time, but we have to be able then to override it, to be able to take action or just do it, just have a go. And then, like you said, the growth is around the corner. The you know, the opportunity to actually see what you can be, what you actually are, is by taking action and leaning into your best self. And I agree with you, Clive, that society curates our best self to show it as perfect. You know, so when you go onto social media, maybe with the exception of TikTok, there is so much perfection. You know, having a great lunch, having a great life, you know, great day, everything is perfect. But the reality is our small self is still there, even in those moments. And, you know, and it's actually so misleading to everyone that we only have a best self when everyone's feeling caught up still, you know, and it's a constant battle. It's a day by day battle that we all do have a small self. And I totally agree with you that if we were to share that much more openly, like we are on this podcast, even incredible, you know, people would look at you and go, oh my goodness, this guy, he's amazing. And you are amazing. But just to know that you, the amazing entrepreneur, has these constant challenges and doubts, etc. I think it's really reassuring.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Rowena, I think, you know, if you look at your transition from when you were working at J&J to what you're doing now, like it's you know, pardon me for saying this, everyone, but it's a balls out exercise. You're now committed to transforming people's lives and having them get an insight about themselves that they didn't otherwise have access to. You know, there's a great book called The Second Mountain, which is, it talks about how we all have these great careers and they grow up and then, you know, you step off that career and certain things can happen. And then on your second mountain, it's about how do you be a contribution to other people. So I think that what you're doing is that second mountain, in that you're being a contribution to other people. And through that, you're, you know, getting insights for yourself, which are incredibly beneficial because you're talking to people like me who you say are successful, and to understand that, you know, we're faulty devices, as I say. So yeah, but I also don't think as myself as being successful at all. Like I think that the trajectory of my life, when I started with some very unfortunate circumstances, my father died, I suffered abuse and neglect and trauma and all these, you know, terrible things as a child. So compared to the way I started and the way I could have gone to where I am, I would say I'm very lucky. You know, because a lot of people that started that way aren't as lucky. What does luck mean? Hard work, great relationships, health and well-being, mindfulness, lots of therapy, good food, exercise, like all those things equate to a rewarding quality of life. And yeah, so the summation of what I'm trying to say there is, what is success? It comes with doubt, it comes with fear, it comes with imposter syndrome. But I think true success is a rewarding quality of life and being a contribution to other people. That's really ultimately what we should be doing. But what marketing and communications and new product development says is the opposite. And we've been guilty of all those things. Like you must have the new car, the new watch, the new clothes, the new house, all that kind of stuff. And where I'm at in my life, I think I just don't need any of those things anymore at all. I've sold all that crap and been through that transition. And so society puts on us that we need to upgrade the things and or we need to upgrade ourselves. Where in actual fact, true peace is actually, as you know, is just, for you, you've got a happy place up the coast. It's finding peace in all those feelings and just knowing that those feelings of doubt I heard them described recently. They're like characters in a fairy tale. The feelings that just pass through, the characters change, and that's all they are.
I love that. And
not my it's from there's a book called The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest, which I highly recommend.
But I love also that metaphor of, the fairy tale, the Disney, whichever one you want to choose, because there's always, the hero, but there's always the villain. There's always all these things going on, and it's the hero's journey, right? It's like, how do they overcome great challenges to finally find what matters in the end, to find their happiness. And and I think that is a really important journey. I've did the kind of what society would say is the good path when I was in my 20s and 30s. And I'm not saying it's the bad path at all, but it was, society setting the expectation, and I'm like, okay, I seem to be doing okay at this thing. But it's only when you start to see what that gives you and go, it's actually, not all it's cracked up to be. What actually is happiness for me, that you then start to think, well, okay, what are the things that really bring me happiness? And that's a really important milestone, I think, for everyone. And whether it happens when you're younger or middle-aged or older, it doesn't matter, because it's actually not a race. But it's such an important question, and it's a hard question to answer. What genuinely makes me happy? And how do you strip back all the things that are supposed to make you happy? And they may, like you said, I've got my place up the coast, and I would say just going there and being with nature and being with my family and having quality time. I call it my happy place up at Pearl Beach. And I feel so rejuvenated and connected up there. But other things, I'm like, I know now, like, yeah, I can get rid of that. Someone said to me the other day, oh, like, don't you think that in your 50s, that's when you really have to focus on, maximizing earning potential, because it's before you retire and all that sort of stuff? And it was quite interesting, because I think, I don't know, like 5-10 years ago, I probably would have gone, absolutely. And I actually said to them, I'm like, no, I've actually got enough money. Like, it's not that I'm super rich, but that's not going to change my happiness. I'm working, I'm able to make a living, David and I are
Yeah.
comfortable. I don't
Yeah.
need more money. That's not my focus. I want to really explore happiness and contribution and helping
Yeah.
others navigate this thing called life, because it is
Yeah.
challenging. And I don't think we share the whole picture as we should,
No.
particularly as people who've got a few decades of experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree. Agree.
So, Clive, one
Agree.
of the things you did a few years ago is, in your own words, you semi-retired or you took time out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I'd love to hear what led you to that, and I guess eventually what led you to come back.
Yep. That's easy. So I've run a bunch of, this is like a founder's perspective. Is I think if you're a founder, you see something that you want to change or that you can challenge or make a difference to. And for me, it was I understood from my background that I could buy a Sony Handycam, an Apple computer, and make better communications than a big advertising company could. So I challenged the status quo. Um, when you build a business, you go from this, a founder is generally a creative person or a person who has a vision for something to be different. In building a business, you then become the head of sales and the head of HR, which then tends to sometimes squash your vision or creativity or why you start a business in the first place. So I'd had 15 years of that. And as you said in the opening, along the way, started a bunch of other crazy escapades. So after 15 years, I was worn out. I noticed in myself, I found it hard to go to work. So I was just at the end of my time doing those things. So nothing was planned. I was searching for a farm to buy because I find that very peaceful. And I ended up, renting a place in the country, which is going to be a weekender while we tried to find the permanent place. I spent 2 or 3 weekends there, and I thought to myself, I'm just not going back. So I didn't. The kids homeschooled for 2 or 3 years, or 2 years. We bought horses and cows, and just had an amazing life, incredible life. They could sleep in, they could study at their own pace. So that beautiful, enriching, healing experience. I have a philosophy is, how we go away on the weekends and we go for a walk in a national park and we go, oh my God, I feel so great. That feeling of feeling so great is natural. It's normal. And it should be our everyday, not the weekender. So that's my outtake of that experience in the country. Then I met my partner, Emma. I was coming down to the city while I was hanging around waiting for her to finish work. I would meet with past colleagues, and colleagues would say to me, past colleagues would say, when I spend time with you, I feel uplifted, I feel wise. And then my friend Stephen Marks, who founded GYG, said to me, Clive, in his New York accent, what the F are you doing in the country? You shouldn't be retired. You've got so much juice in the tank. You should come back to the city. And I had that comment a couple of times. So then I transitioned back down here for, kids were living in an isolated place. They needed to be around, social environments. So we moved back down here. And I, to like you, I enjoy being a contribution to people. And I started Compadres, and here we are.
So it was a feeling that you kind of wanted to get away, and then you're like, this is great. Why don't I just stay? And it
Yeah.
was amazing for the kids, and you
Mm.
kind of completely changed up what every day looked like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have this perspective that, I have lots of things that I want to impart on people. Is life is a canvas.
Mm.
We painted the the canvas here. Those colors were full. We couldn't add any more. Let's go paint the canvas differently. Add some other colors to it. And then I'm sure there'll be other colors in the future. Well, there is now, and some more pending. So it's making sure that you're and there's challenges in all this, right? And there's fear and there's doubt and all the things that and
Yeah.
imposter syndrome, particularly when it comes to, starting a farm. But I think that painting the canvas different colors is something we always should be doing in many aspects of our life. That's the way I see it anyway, is how do I, and that goes back to what you talk about with uncomfortable growth, is that in painting that canvas, there's an element of, well, not an element, there is a large amount of discomfort.
I think also too, we create our own blinkers. So for example, it's like, oh, you can't just do that. You can't just move to the country, or you can't just take the kids out of school with their friends and homeschool them, right? But actually we can. It's just that we've created these blinkers that this is the one path, and that's not necessarily true. I was having this conversation with a person I'm currently coaching, and she was talking about I really want to do something different or start my own business, but I've got the kids in private school and I've got a mortgage, and my partner doesn't only works part-time, so they're not working full-time, so I can't. And I actually kind of said, well, it's not that you can't, it's just that you don't like necessarily, or you're not sure about what has to change to enable that. I said, so for example, you could take the kids out of private school and put them into public school. You could downgrade to a cheaper house, cheaper area. You could think really differently about the type of work that both you and your husband do. But sometimes I think we do, like, because we like the security and the safety, and it's the one plan, it's the plan we've made, and we don't want to disrupt that plan. But then nothing succeeds as planned.
No. Well, there's a great quote that from a father figure of mine, which is, how do you make God laugh? Tell him your plans. And what I'm hearing in your coachees, is just, they're sticking, and you talk about the path, is that there's a great book called The Pathless Path, which is about that. And we're now living in a society where that question that your coachee has is a great question. And the fact that they're having that question is a door opening to actually acting on that. And that person will regret that they didn't do that if they don't follow that inquiry or the question that's poised. Like, you have to think things through, and don't be as loose as what I was, because that's not for everyone. But yes, there is nothing saying that you should or couldn't make that transition. A lot of people said at the time I was really brave for moving out of the city, but I wasn't brave. It was just logical. Like, it wasn't that difficult, really. I'd just extract kids from school, cool. Find a place to live, cool. Find a different way of getting education for your kids, cool. It's that easy. But maybe society and the way in which we think it should be has it been more difficult.
And how did you find your energy? Sorry, Clive, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you can interrupt. Go on.
I was going to say, how did you find your energy impacted by that very different environment, from being in the city in a job to the country, and not on a set timetable because the kids are homeschooled, you've got horses, you've got nature. How did that impact you, the person?
Okay, so the way I describe it is I felt like, so I was burnt out when I left. and I
Mm.
could tell the energy in my body. It was like I was still an energetic person, but I was definitely burnt out emotionally, psychologically, and creatively. So I feel like the arrow has been pulled back. And I've got a recoil not unlike the way I was when I started my first business in my early 30s. So, how did it impact me? It's given me an enormous amount of energy that I never thought I'd have again.
Mm.
Um, it enabled me to onboard a bunch of wisdom. So when you're doing what we're doing now, which is busy and meetings and driving and traffic
Mm.
and shopping centers and schools and pickups and drop offs and sport and all that kind of stuff, your ability to onboard wisdom and be present to wisdom is limited. So what it enabled me to do was read a lot of books, watch a lot of podcasts, think, write, and within me on a cellular level, from all the exercise I was doing and the animal husbandry, all those things enabled me to heal a lot from some of those things I spoke about from my childhood. So it changed everything. I would say it's given me, a lot. There's been nothing but positives. It's all been positive.
That's beautiful, because I do think that, again, society expects that we're one speed, which is full out and then asleep. and we're
Oh,
actually not. This is something that I've explored a lot personally as well through the uncomfortable growth. And I've kind of come to the perspective that we go through energy cycles, and there's a lot of literature on this, but we have a recharge cycle. Like when we're exhausted and burnt out, or we've been full on, we need to give ourselves a chance to recharge, and just to slow and let the body recuperate, because we're not robots and machines. We're living cells that need to recharge. And then once you have actually recharged and healed, and you've had the chance to take on a broader perspective, that's when I find possibility starts to bubble.
yep,
And
yep,
you can start to feel the universe. I find with myself, I become more outwardly focused. When I'm
yep,
recharging, I'm quite inwardly focused. When I'm
yep,
feeling the shift of possibility, I'm very outwardly focused. And
yep,
everything just seems to happen. My intuition, when I'm in a possibility phase, because I'm recharged, is off the Richter scale. And
yep,
things just happen. And then usually that culminates in the action phase, or the
yep,
choice phase. And then suddenly that's when you're like, oh, yes, the possibility has emerged. It's an opportunity. Here's the action. And it's boom, 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 boom. But post
yep,
that, you still need to go through a recharge phase. You
yep.
can't just
Which
be
is
in one phase.
why we have, and I think a lot of executives and career orientated people just stay in the one phase, and then they wonder why they end up with a big belly or cancer or bad relationships. Sorry to put that on people, but like there is that that negative outcome. Well, professional athletes play one game a week, and then they spend an enormous amount of time recovering from that one game. I think it's 3 to 4 times more in between training. So there's your answer.
Yeah. And I also think too that there's, again, the societal belief, particularly in corporate or the workplace, that productivity is action. It's about quantity, not quality. And I know that when I'm burnt out, or I've gone through a big action phase and I'm tired, my quality of thinking, reflecting, going on to the next possibility, like getting to the next phase, is limited. I am not productive. I'm tired. And sure, I can still keep doing the same things, but the quality of what I'm doing isn't there. And my ability to actually step back and then see the next possibility and opportunity. And I loved your phrase, how you can onboard wisdom. Our ability to onboard wisdom when we're tired to burnt out is like next to nil. And it's one of the things that I think we fundamentally have to shift, because there's so many people burnt out in the workplace. There's so many people burnt out at home with their families. And it's actually the opposite of productive. But the only way we know to measure it is, stuff, projects, output, stuff. And it's like doing more stuff doesn't make it quality or the right stuff.
Don't confuse busyness with success or productivity. I agree with you. I think there's some roles and there's some stages in your career. Like I remember in my teens, because I started working when I was, a teen, and my 20s and my 30s, I was an absolute beast when it came to working. I was more productive than anyone else, which probably speaks to that incompletion in my life, or that hole that I had to fill around success and achievement, because that was my framework. So I remember that, and I love that, and I don't regret any of it. And I also remember running my businesses. I never really thought about making decisions. I just made decisions really quickly, which led to some form of, changing my mind a lot, because I hadn't thought things through enough. But I do believe that we do need, obviously, a balance between productivity meets insight, meets wisdom, and then more productivity and space and time, for sure. But then there's certain roles where it is all about productivity. It's about, I am a processor of certain things, which obviously will be ultimately, some of that will be replaced with technology, or already is replaced with technology. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree with you too. You can go through phases. Like I remember when I was doing my Asia Pacific role with J&J, and I was traveling a lot. But I loved it, and I loved it for, 3 or 4 years, because I got to meet lots of people in different countries and work on different business and different cultures. And it was just so interesting and stimulating. But after a few years, I was really tired, like I'm like, I need to pull back on this now, because I'm just tired. It doesn't have the energizing excitement, and the thought of getting on another plane, I was just like, I want to. And so I think the big shift that's important is, I think there's two. There's, how do you recognize your own energy, and don't beat yourself up to try and just be one. Like, listen to yourself and know that we're not robots. And even if you've done 3-4 years of full throttle, that's fine. It doesn't mean that you can sustain that for another 3 or 4 years.
Absolutely not.
And it's normal to go through these cycles, right? It's normal to need, after a high peak, to go then through a recharge, and it does refresh the ability to create what's next. So I think that's important, is the self-recognition. And then I think the other bit that's really important with that self-recognition is to own it, own your paths around it. So, and I think, this is where the workplace is very much around, we need productivity. We need constant productivity. Actually, we need more productivity, and we've restructured. So we have less people, but we need more productivity, and just do more. But so the workplace currently doesn't recognize it. And I think that's why so many people are burnt out. But what are the choices you're looking to make? So what are the things that can rejuvenate you, or take that long holiday? In Australia, we're famous around the world for taking 4 weeks off. Take 4 weeks off. If you need more than that, make big choices, because people who are in the corporate world are not necessarily stuck as some people who don't have options because they're less financially prosperous, right? Like they don't have
Yeah.
choices the same way.
Yeah.
Most people in corporate do have choices. They just don't like the choices.
Well, I think in keeping up with the Joneses,
Mm-hmm.
we've got nice cars and big
Mm-hmm.
houses,
Mm-hmm.
and then we run out of choices.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you run out of that choice to take that 6 months off or 6 weeks or whatever it is, because
Mm-hmm.
we've been on the comparison merry-go-round, and we've keep going up, 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 up,
Mm-hmm.
up the corporate ladder, up the housing ladder, and then you end up in a world of pain,
Mm-hmm.
and no choice. And choice is about life is about freedom of choice ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're getting into a whole conversation about capitalism, which I have a perspective on as well. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think you never regret. I say to people, you never regret spending more time with your children. You'll never regret it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I look forward. I pick my kids up pretty much and drop them off pretty much every day. It's like Christmas for me every afternoon. I want to, pardon me for saying this, kids, but I want to squeeze the juice out of this time that I have with them, so I
Mm-hmm.
can look back, as the Dalai Lama says, a second time and enjoy those thoughts and the memories. Um, and I have another philosophy: if you can't pick up and drop your kids from school a bunch of times a week, then your career is off track.
Mm-hmm.
It's that easy. And the beauty of COVID and work from home is that it's delivered that. And there's so many, mothers and fathers that allow, I had coffee with someone this morning. They said COVID was so good because I got closer to 2-3-year-old son. How great's that? And I hope that doesn't change for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
As there is that push to go back to the workplace, it's like, yep, I
Mm-hmm.
get the productivity thing, because businesses I speak to have suffered from productivity because of people working from home. And there's a whole generational thing about, I believe this is my right, I believe this and that, etc. Totally get it. However, you do have to share the air. You
Mm-hmm.
do have to be productive. Have to be around performance with other
Mm-hmm.
people and all those other measures. So yeah, what we're talking about here is balance.
We are.
Listening to yourself,
Exactly.
finding your own balance, and stick
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah. And being flexible about how that's delivered. I think there are, like you said, very different perceptions around what what productivity looks like. And I know I am way more productive with a bit of balance in my life, or the ability to work from home versus be in the office, or, I can go through periods of high, full throttle, but I can't sustain it. And actually, when I try and sustain it, I become less productive. I'm not my best self. I don't show up as my best self. I show up as my tired, short, short-tempered,
Yeah,
cranky, black
yeah,
hat self,
yeah,
rather
yeah,
than my, positivity and blue sky and energy and let's get people together and let's make people feel good. And I don't show up as my best self because there's nothing left in me. And I think when you have your own cup full
mm,
with what you need, that's when you're able to give a lot more to others and to businesses, or to whatever it is you're doing. You're allowed to give more to your
yeah,
family, to your work, to
yeah,
your contribution, everything.
yeah, yeah. But also going back to what I said earlier, is remember, we're all faulty devices. And I think the complication is, I think, through the comparison thing, and the way the world presents itself, and we've got to be successful, all
Mm,
those things rob us of the acceptance that you don't have to be happy all the time. And as Ryan Holiday says, the author of The Obstacle Is the Way, resilience through challenge and perseverance builds character, and
mm,
character is charisma, um, and character is wisdom. And then you are, through all those things, able to, the full circle of life, be a contribution back to people, and
mm,
appreciate that you need balance, which is again what you're talking about.
mm. Well, this has been the most amazing chat, Clive.
Great,
Knew it
likewise.
would
Thank you.
be because we always have amazing chats.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to say to whoever is listening?
Uh, Stay calm.
Stay calm.
Yeah, if you feel peace,
Mm,
you're on the right track.
mm,
You don't feel peace, take a breath until the right path shows up for you.
mm. Beautiful wisdom. Well, thank you
It's not
so much.
mine.
Oh, yeah, but you're channeling it. You're bringing it to
Yeah.
others, which is just beautiful.
Thanks, Rowena. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, thanks so much for being on Uncomfortable Growth Uncut.
Thank you.
If you are inspired but thinking, I can't do that, then you are so wrong. Anyone can learn the art of uncomfortable growth with the help of my flagship program, Uncomfortable Growth, Own Your Reinvention. In this, you will learn to navigate your own internal contradictions to finally unlock the courage and commitment to live a deeply meaningful life by design and on your terms. Uncomfortable growth is about the struggle and joy in discovering who you are, what you truly want, and how to make it happen. If this is something you are ready for, then find out more at www.rowenamillward.com. What have you got to lose, or more importantly, gain?